Well, hello and welcome to TrailHeads, where the journey starts here. I'm Jim Barrett, and today I'm joined by my brother Jason.
Hello, Jim. Hello, everybody.
Hello. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about mentors and mentorship and what that means to different people in both the professional and the personal sides. How are you, first of all?
I'm doing just fine. And you?
I am well. Yes,
Excellent.
I am in
Excellent.
Atlanta, and where are you today, my brother?
I am in Oxford, Mississippi. And might I say, I think we both had good mentors by how cordial and nice we're being to each other.
Is isn't that true? Yes, because secretly, no. Um, no, the kind of background for this podcast is about physical fitness and about well-being and stuff like that. And for me, for being on the trails, thinking about mentorship and how I started my SCV hikers in Southern California originally. I started it out with a couple of guys that I was sort of we were all going through our sort of own self betterment, working on ourselves in different ways. And so I sort of followed them up the trails for the better part of like a year and a half or so. And I learned a lot from them. And much of it was just to see their commitment to it. I know that you've had a group of guys that you have worked out with for some time as well. Talk about them and how they sort of mentored you into that.
Sure. Yeah, I just thinking the other day about that group, and it goes back probably 13 years or so. I had a good friend of mine from the neighborhood at the time in Houston that was going to this boot camp in the morning, and he invited me to come along. And so I said, okay, what time? And he said 5:30 a.m. And I said no, but he showed up anyway, thankfully, and took me to the first of what has turned out to be many amazing opportunities, certainly to exercise and to kind of work out in a group environment, but also over the years has really turned into quite a group of friends and opportunities for fellowship. We'll do some things outside of the morning sessions every so often. So it's really, took off and it has been a great network. And, since we moved from Houston to Oxford, I've really missed that group, to be honest with you.
So you've worked out with these guys for a while, and how is that? Would you call that then, I guess, a mentorship? What those guys started for you?
I mean, a little bit in regards to sometimes we'll talk about different things that all of us are going through kind of on a one-on-one type basis as it's a group workout kind of thing. After the session, there's a smaller subset of the group that kind of sticks around and we'll do a devotional and talk about, something, maybe a Bible verse or something, but that gives the opportunity for there to be a little bit more connection, for those guys that are so inclined, and we have opportunities to just kind of talk about life. So there's a lot of mentorship that goes on there.
I needed to sort of have a little bit of a refresher, and so when I was getting ready to do this, I wanted to look and see what does the interweb define mentorship as, and what I found was a mentor is a person who provides guidance and support to help someone learn and grow. Mentors can help people in their personal and professional lives. And so I would say it comes from wisdom from the mentor and to a certain extent the mentee as well. How do you feel about that definition?
A lot of people think of mentorship as a one-way street where a mentee is only gaining information or direction or advice from a mentor. But as I've kind of been, now that I'm a little older, I've kind of been on both sides of that equation and had the opportunity to mentor others. And I find many times, probably like you, that I probably get more from that situation from the mentee than I might otherwise have been if I'm on the side being mentored, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, we work in different fields. Jason is has a background in well, talk about your background before. I don't want to speak for you on that.
I spent, I guess, the better part of 20 years working in an in-house legal environment, really because of an in-house employment and labor counsel, focused on really any and everything that might come up from a employment law standpoint during the employee life cycle. So with that opportunity over the past 20 years to work on people related issues, there's a lot of mentorship that kind of plays into that. whether it's a supervisor employee relationship, whether it's peer to peer, whether it's executives to their stakeholders, whatever it might be, have had the opportunity to work in that capacity. And then 2022, went out on my own and started my own fractional legal and HR consulting company. Also, really focused on helping businesses as they navigate any kinds of employee relations, employment and labor law, and data privacy type issues.
I want to come back to that. How you, as you mentioned, you worked in-house for a number of years and you recently started your own business. And that's much of my career, but from the creative field, what I have done for most of my career is write, produce, edit short form promos. They're the little 30-second spots that promote the next TV show. Sometimes I've done commercials, but at other times I've worked on long form TV shows. So for my first few years in Los Angeles, I worked for all of the broadcast networks. And then after about 15 years of doing that, I also transitioned into starting my own company and did that for the better part of 20 years. I had a mentor who, before I moved to Los Angeles, a gal I worked for named Lorraine, and I was at a CBS affiliate there. And from day one, I expressed to her that Pittsburgh was going to be my stepping stone. And so I didn't look at it as a long-term place to be. I was very focused on coming to Los Angeles. I didn't know what was going to happen beyond that. I knew I wanted to work in entertainment. But Lorraine, knowing that, because she could have been someone who would have sold me on trying to stay in Pittsburgh or try and convince me to stay there longer. But man, every step of the way, she was so supportive. And really, the way that I got to Los Angeles had much to do with her introductions that she made through her contacts that she already had there and through the CBS network. I ended up loving Pittsburgh in the 3.5 years I was there. It's actually a beautiful city. I worked with some great people and made some good friends I'm still in contact with today. I was very young when I moved there. I was 22, and I had put my college on pause. And she was great about adjusting my hours so I could leave at a hard 6 p.m. out where I could go and take night classes. And so over the course of about 2 of the 3 years I was there, I ended up finishing my degree. And then about a year after that is when I came to Los Angeles. But man, I was so impressed with her to remain unwavered with that and didn't sort of change that. She was very supportive. She taught me patience. I don't want to put you on the spot, but talk a little bit about, did you have mentors when you were in-house that helped you make that change?
I had a mentor that I really, even now, even though I was there for about 5 years, this particular company, that just still, I harken back to those days working for him. This would have been my second in-house job. My first in-house job was really kind of me exploring different areas of the law within the business and trying to figure out, what area I was most interested in and passionate about. And a lot of times when you work in-house, you're not necessarily going to be able to focus on one particular area because depending on how the staffing is, you might have to work on everything. That was good for me in that I didn't really know, especially with that first job coming out of law school, exactly what area of the law, I kind of wanted to focus in. So when I figured out from my first job that I really wanted to work in and around employment and labor law and working with human resources and people related issues, I started to look for opportunities to have that kind of role. And I went to work for an organization based in Houston. And my mentor, his name is Gary. He was the general counsel at the time, a Brit, very super nice guy, super intelligent guy, also a pretty wicked sense of humor. Was very much about, certainly getting the work done, but also very much about not taking yourself so seriously. And sometimes, now that I've, look back over my time working with him and working with other Brits, love the Brits, by the way. But sometimes the humor and the intelligence and the work ethic, he had the perfect combination of that, I guess I would say. And just seeing that through somebody who was also very well respected throughout the organization. He would give me opportunities to go and meet with the CFO and the CEO, which, as a young attorney, that's pretty rare, but just giving me opportunities to kind of learn on the fly to fail and be okay with it and not be so scared that I was going to get, fired for a mistake or something I said or did that wasn't the right thing to do. He just created an environment that allowed me to learn, that allowed me to kind of stretch what I was comfortable doing, and really kind of like what you were describing with Lorraine. He kind of knew that this might not be my lifetime career position, and he always talked about, I know you like the employment and labor law, and you like that focus, but we're going to give you some other assignments to kind of have you stretch, have you learn, how to manage other kinds of issues, because you're going to need that throughout the rest of your career. And as a young guy at the time, I didn't really appreciate that, but now as I look back at it, I think, wow, what a gift that was. And so he was definitely, I would say, at the top of the list in terms of one of my career mentors.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the value of failure. Not that we focus on that, but I would. People have said it for some time now that we learn more from our failures perhaps than from our successes. And I would say in my case, that's definitely been the case. That not that we strive to fail, but it's something that definitely can that we're going to learn more from that and be able to step back and take another look at our career too.
Sure.
One of the things with my field is that at certain points in what I do as a writer, producer, director, editor, several different hats, is people at a certain point, especially after I started my own company, people sort of zeroed in on that I came from an editing background. And so they would want, when I started the company, well, I want to make sure that you're going to be editing these spots, Jim. You're going to be doing that, right? And in the beginning, I had to say yes. But as time went on, my focus shifted to, because it just wasn't possible when we got really big, and I was fortunate to be very successful in the first 2 years, and I just couldn't edit everything. It wasn't possible. So I would tell my clients, I have my hand in everything, and I'm there, and I will do my best to edit. If we were doing a whole campaign, for example, I would write, produce, and edit several of the spots that were in that campaign. But I said, let me introduce you to some of my young people too, who I'm bringing up as you mentored me, as I'm talking to my client, that I'm mentoring them. And so let me bring you some things that maybe you don't expect as well. And for the most part, my clients really responded to that. But that was, moving into, as you were touching on, that getting into that role where eventually we may become the mentor after being the mentee for so long. And so one of the things I enjoyed beyond and still enjoy beyond that, sitting at the edit console and editing a spot and doing all of that pure creativity there, I really loved switching gears. And a number of young people who came to work for my little company, it was their first real job, either in Los Angeles or in some cases in television and media altogether. So I really felt good about those people coming in and having different levels of menteeship as I was working with them, and really had a joy in sort of passing that on. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, I have some of the same appreciation for those kinds of opportunities for sure, to be able to kind of work with others, whether they're in the same field or kind of a similar field. So I guess in my in-house career, probably the best example I could give was I was reporting through the legal department on legal issues. So I kind of reported to the general counsel, but I was very frequently, if not daily, working with the human resources department. Could be different levels of experience or education within the HR department, from maybe an entry level HR person right out of college through all the way through maybe somebody who's worked in HR for 20 years. And so that span of experience, both within HR and also in the legal department, kind of gave me the opportunity to work with different individuals of different ages, men and women, all kinds of experience levels. And it was interesting to see how you put those individuals in a room together, or you have them work on a particular project together. I just love to see how that team could kind of ultimately come together, and we can leverage the gifts and the strengths that each individual had. And typically someone maybe with less experience we would probably learn just as much from them and a different way to do things or think about things than we would, people who maybe we work together or have the same level of experience. So I don't know if that answers the question, but I've definitely had that opportunity to work with folks in different levels of experience, and always have enjoyed being able to try to teach those that are seeking, information and knowledge from someone maybe for me that had more experience, and really vice versa, where I had the opportunity to learn from them as well.
That's some great examples there. One thing I wanted to bring up too, don't mean to surprise you with this, but our dad, when I was a boy, our dad was kind of still in the beginning of his career. He was an infectious disease pediatric specialist. And when I was young, our dad, if you've ever heard of the real life boy in the plastic bubble, his name was David Vetter. He was born in 1971, and he was essentially born with an immune system that wasn't working, or some would say that he didn't have an immune system. And so our dad, being an infectious disease specialist, he served as David's pediatrician. He worked with a team of immunologists. And our dad always also had this kind of wonderful sort of modesty about himself. He wasn't really interested in the limelight that was being shown on the immunologists, who are the ones working closely with David, but Dad was certainly there every day, and David was his patient. But I was always impressed and I've sort of discovered this in more recent years, looking back, because we lost our dad a couple of years ago now. But it was always amazing to me that our dad started. He had very strong mentors, I think, in those immunologists, and they were, David was the top priority as their patient, but they were also the medicine that they were practicing in the early 70s into the early 80s became instrumental when AIDS came along in the 80s. And much of the treatment and research on David became instrumental in the creation of the cocktails that were used to dampen the symptoms of HIV and AIDS, and eventually present, I guess we can't say it's a cure, but allow people to live with HIV and AIDS now without suffering any of the symptoms in a dramatic way. And I was always blown away by Dad and his ability to learn from that, and also being so kind of quiet about it. Wasn't promoting himself. And some people will argue, well, he should have, but I was impressed with his sort of quietness about doing that. And I remember that years later, when we moved from Houston, where David was, to Memphis, Tennessee, Dad eventually became head of the department and then head of the hospital. He was the medical director of the Children's Hospital in Memphis, where we were. And he talked about, he said, I really miss being in there and seeing the patients. The trade-off for Dad being medical director came with focusing on the administration part of his job, and he really missed seeing the patients. Kind of like, I guess, for me with the editing, I really loved the process of working with my staff and with my young people, and sort of teaching them and sort of passing on whatever I'd learned from my mentors. And I loved seeing that happen with our dad.
I mean, his reputation preceded him in so many ways, right? I mean, I think about after he passed was really when my eyes were opened to so many things that he accomplished. I mean, certainly we know what an amazing dad and father he was, and he manifested that. We got that experience. On the professional side, like you said, he kind of tempered that a little bit. At least, I didn't appreciate until we had people speaking, for instance, at his memorial, that were speaking about how highly reputable he was within the industry. Looking at the different publications, then the hundreds upon hundreds of articles that
Right.
he had published, letters that he received from prior patients who he treated, and who he walked through their pain and suffering with, that
Yeah.
many years later would send him pictures and notes and thank you, Dr. Barrett. I mean, just tear provoking kind of tributes to him that we would never have really known or seen, because he wasn't the kind of person that would really speak to that. That was just who he was.
Absolutely. I was blessed to have a couple of mentors, though. The one I can't not mention is, his name is Frank, and he was a teacher of mine I had in high school. Now most public high schools in America have a TV station or some kind of a media program, but in the 1980s, it wasn't nearly as common as it is today. So, Frank, who was the head of the fine arts department, he directed all the plays, the musicals, the debate classes, the anything that had to do with that. He taught those classes, but he decided, hey, I'm going to bring a TV station into my realm as well. Frank created a real learn by doing environment that continues to this day. Wasn't about the type of equipment we had to work with. It was really about the responsibility he entrusted to us and the professionalism he instilled. And when I talked to other graduates of that program, people who didn't go on to become TV producers or actors or anything that might have seemed obvious and on our radar at the time, who've gone on to work in government and work in accounting or whatever they ended up doing, the skills that they learned under Frank's leadership in that program managed to apply to a multitude of different fields. And I'm so appreciative of that. It helped me later on too when I went from being an employee of networks and TV stations to starting my own business. Um, can I ask you, was there was there somebody who did that, who sort of really let you be Jason and didn't sort of put so many restrictions on you as an employee before you started your company?
Well, I think about maybe not so much from the employment standpoint. What I would say, in terms of thinking through who I might point back to as sort of my Frank, so to speak, it goes back actually earlier years, kind of in that elementary, middle school time frame. And it was a man at our church that was our youth group leader. His name was Fred, like our dad. The work that he did, I think we met twice. I think we had a Wednesday night meeting and then like a Sunday night meeting. And just was so instrumental in creating an environment that allowed us to kind of get to know each other and develop those friendships, and dedicated his own time. He had a son at the time, and then I think he stayed with that program for at least 4 or 5 years. But just thinking about the sacrifice that he made, and really, the friendships that he helped to kind of foster and develop, and kind of a cool thing. I'm looking forward to trying to do this. My wife and I are going back, Manny, are going back to Memphis in a couple of weeks for something, and I'm going to go to that church and try to say, because he's still there. I didn't realize that he's still there. He was also the choir director. Wow. He's been the choir director for many, many, many years. And I called the church a couple weeks ago about something, and they said, "Oh, Fred's still here." So I'm looking forward to going back and saying hello to him. And he wrote me college recommendation letters and all kinds of things. But just I think probably the biggest takeaway that I had, especially now that I'm older and have had teenagers myself and raised teenagers, and seen those middle school years from the eyes of a dad, just the sacrifice that he made in doing that as a volunteer and bringing all those kids together at an age where you put two teenagers in a room, that's one thing. You put 20 or 25 in a room, that takes a whole nother level of patience.
Sure, absolutely.
About what he did for us was pretty impactful.
So, Jason, as we sort of wrap this up, I wanted to touch base with you. I want to mention one of the people who I feel like I sort of helped them find themselves to a certain extent. I felt like I was taking what my mentors had taught me and paying it forward a bit. A young man who came from Illinois, outside Chicago, and he wasn't sure exactly what he wanted to do, but under my roof, he learned how to be an assistant editor. He learned graphics and 3D animations, but he also learned basically to wear the hats that I wore for many years in my career, becoming a writer, producer, editor, and he's done that now for gosh, 15 plus years. And he, interestingly enough, has ended up at the hospital where our dad was back in the 70s.
Wow.
He is like the media director for this hospital. And it popped up on one of my notifications on social media, and I saw that and I reached out to him, and he goes, "That is crazy," because he didn't even know that. He didn't, but
Right.
I was so wonderful to see it kind of come full circle, because he was one of my favorites. He was so humble and so eager to learn and so easy to work with and just one of those kind of dream employees. So his name is Chad, and it was just such an amazing sort of awakening to see that kind of come full circle. Can you speak to that a little bit? Have you been able to see some of the mentorship, menteeship sort of come around like that?
Yeah, that's been a lot of fun. So my business is really purposely focused in terms of the name and some of the information that we put out there on, family is really the root of the business. And so our daughter, Addie, who's a singer-songwriter that lives in Nashville, that's her primary passion right now, certainly is songwriting and performing and getting music out there. She's on Spotify, by the way. And she, though, has also helped me since I've started the business, mainly on things like my newsletter, my marketing, a lot of the social media stuff that I'm not gifted in doing or I don't have the time. She's really just taken that and run with it. She's learned about the business. She's not a lawyer. She doesn't want to be a lawyer, and that's good. That's okay. But she's learned about the business and kind of the clients that I'm sort of, focusing on, and picked that up and run with it. And she's pretty much doing our newsletter single-handedly right now, and kind of has our social media calendar that she's kind of working on. And that's been a lot of fun. That's been a different way to connect with her more on the business and sort of the career side that we might not have otherwise had the opportunity to do.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I've talked to several people about this to sort of get ready for this podcast. Who's your mentor? Most people are like, oh, I don't know. Let me get back to you. And a few people could rattle it right off, But I think sometimes people aren't even really aware. Oh, that gal down the hall actually taught me this, and this guy who I had in high school was brought me out of my shell or whatever it was. That sometimes it's kind of humbling to come back, right? And to think about the people along our path. I mean, some will say, oh, I did it on my own. I'm all self-made. And I kind of call BS on that. But
Right.
because so many people helped us in one way or another, whether it was a direct, obvious mentorship or in other ways, somebody who encouraged us. So I would just encourage anybody who is out there in the working world, or maybe you have a pause in your career, think about those people who did help you along the way. And if you are struggling right now, to maybe reach out to those mentors. And maybe if you're still in touch with them, or even if you haven't been in touch with them in a while, maybe you can reach out and remind them of how much they meant to you and how much their support meant to you, in your career path, in your education path, in your personal life.
Everybody, I'm sure, at some point along the way, whether it's on the personal side, the professional side, whatever it might be, has had a mentor of some variety, right? And could be a parent, could be someone that maybe you just should think about the gift that they gave to you, whether it's advice or some other kind of help along the way, like you say, and express that gratitude, because life's too short, and it's important to be able to think back, to have that gratitude, and to your point, maybe reach out to them, reconnect with them, say thank you, and you never know, maybe you'll have an opportunity to continue those conversations.
Absolutely. Gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. My gratitude to you, brother, for doing this. But that gratitude is so key. And sometimes it can sound like a cliche, but it is so, I think, imperative for us as humans to feel that gratitude and to recognize who has helped us along the way, it's big and small. And so this idea of this podcast, which again I call TrailHeads, it's about the first step of the journey, or crucial steps in the journey. And so, Jason, I just want to thank you again for being my guest today and helping me with it.
I'm honored to have been your guest, and enjoyed our chat for sure.
All right. Thank you, brother.
All right.
We'll see you next time.